Welcome to the Middlesex Moments Radio Show. I'm Dr. Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, and joining me today is one of our students, Estevan Vega. And we're going to be talking about the fact that at an incredibly young age, he's a published author. I just met him this morning for the first time, but recently he gave reading here on the college campus. And I was very sorry that I couldn't make it, but this now is a chance to actually get to talk with you about it. So why don't you first tell us how you came to a point in your life where you thought, I'm going to put words to a page and create a long story, because your books are long too.
Yes.
Yeah.
It started in 5th grade for me, and it was because my teacher at the time assigned us these one-page short story / essays, and they were due every single day. And so for a 5th grader, you're like, oh man, how am I going to pump out something creative and fresh every single day? And at that time, I hated writing. I was not into reading at all. I was really big into like sketching and, watching movies, as every kid is to some point. And my father actually was the one who kind of pulled me away and said, okay, close your eyes and picture what I'm going to tell you. And so we did several sessions like that. And eventually we started writing short stories together. And so I would submit them to the class, and my teacher would read them. And then she would also give me A's. And so I liked getting the A's. And on top of that, I liked having my fellow students engaged in what I had to say. And so a year later, I said, okay, I was looking around at books, and I was seeing all the bestsellers out there. And I would walk in a bookstore, and I'm like, well, how did they do it? And I was seeing that so many of these people were, like 30 and up as far as age goes. And I was like, well, I'm 12. Let me try it. And what's the worst that can happen? I could fall on my face, but at least I could say I tried. And then the way that my mind was working was, I figured, okay, by the time I graduate college, or by the time I'm 30, I'm hoping to have had, established myself. And so that's kind of where it all started.
So one of the things about writers, I think, is that they have a sense of their authentic voice. So did you figure out your voice as an 11-year-old? I mean, do you still get back in touch with that voice?
I think it's always kind of like, it's like an evolving voice, It sometimes it's changing while you're changing, in some respects. But you could definitely still sense that my first book is still the same me as my most recent book. What changes, I think, is how I go about saying the same things. You know what I'm saying? So the themes have pretty much been the same throughout all of my novels. The way that I kind of handle characters and the situations are very much similar. What changes is my style, like how I write it, and the poetic manner, which I use to tell the story.
Boy, I have so many questions. So why don't we take a break here and then come back, and then what we should first of all do is just introduce your books and tell the audience, the listening audience, more about you as a writer.
That sounds good.
Okay. Welcome back. This is Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, and I'm talking today with Estevan Vega, who's one of our students. And it seems to me that it would be really useful, first of all, just if you would give the listeners a sense of the scope of your work. So what have you published, and where could they get it if they wanted to read about it?
Okay, well,
read it.
I mean, you could always check your local bookstore. If they don't have it, they can always order it, or Amazon might be another really good place to check it out. I'm also on the Kindle too, and some of my stuff is on the Nook as well. So pretty much anywhere online. I have published 5 books and several short stories. My first book was called Servant of the Realm, and it's basically about a kid a kid who actually steals a magical serum that allows him to have visions of the future. And in these visions, he sees his loved ones die. And so the whole book, he's trying to, see if he can step in and kind of alter their fate. And then the second book was called The Sacred Sin, which I have actually republished, having rewritten the entire story. And it's under the new book title called The Forsaken. And I've also written the Arson series, which is Arson, book 1, and Ashes is book 2. And it's basically about a teenage boy named Arson Gable who has the ability to create fire with his thoughts. And then he meets this interesting girl who moves into the house next door, who hates the way that she looks because she has scars on her face. So as her way of trying to cope with that tragedy and attempt to feel normal, she walks around with a mask on. And so those are the novels, and then I also have a collection of short stories, and I actually just released a new short story called Music Box, which is free right now on the Kindle, so check it out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, how do you get, can you talk a little bit about the creative process? Like, for example, how did you begin to imagine the Arson series?
Okay, so the creative process works a little bit differently for me every time. Usually it starts with an idea, and then the idea kind of just gnaws at me until, I sit down and I'm like, okay, let me just try to write this. What happens sometimes is I'll be working, I'll be deep into a project, and so I'll get another idea, and then I'll get like 6 or 7 more. And so basically whichever one impresses on me the most, that's the one that I sit down and try to write. And then when I sit down and try to write it, I test it and say, okay, is this working? A few years ago, I actually started a book, and I love the concept. It's just when I sat down to write it, it wasn't coming. It wasn't flowing. It didn't feel natural. It felt forced. And so I kind of shelved it. And since then, I've been just hardcore, working on the Arson series. And basically, the way it works for me is, I get an idea, I sit down, I write it, I push through it, and I draw inspiration from everyday life. I draw inspiration from my professors, from another book I've read, or a movie I've watched, or a song that really means something to me, and I just go from there.
Do you have a sense of where the book's going to wind up at the end of the plot?
Sort of. It's funny because Arson originally was intended as one book, pretty much a beginning, middle, and end, and that was it. And I had actually written the entire book before I realized that I wanted to make it longer. And my father is partly to blame for that. We have conversations a lot about my writing, and he's been a huge influence on, how I write and just the fact that I'm a writer at all.
Is he a writer?
I think he wants to be, but he just never makes the time for it, But he's kind of what got me into it. And so he was talking to me one time, and he said, this character, you feel so strongly about this character, and writing this book has made such an impact on you. So why don't you just make it a series, So you don't have to let this character die, so to speak. He gets to kind of live on. And so I was like, okay, let's try that. And so I rewrote the ending. I rewrote a few chapters before the ending as well to kind of lead up to it. And kind of the rest is kind of history. And now it's going to be a trilogy. So.
Yeah, or maybe more.
We'll see.
Do you know about fan fiction, and do you have an opinion about it? About fan fiction.
I think it's cool, but I don't know that it's kind of hard to sell. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I know that recently, books like, Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, and Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, and all those kinds of books, they're kind of like an exaggerated form of fan fiction because they take something that's already been done and they kind of just make it like more modern and add supernatural to it and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of cool, but I don't know. It's something that's not really for me. I want to create stuff that is in my head, rather than just take like, oh, Harry Potter, and let me just create my version of Harry Potter. I don't know. It's weird for me.
Yeah, I think it's an unusual phenomenon, but obviously it's taking off at the same time. And there are questions about stealing someone's intellectual property because you created this character, Arson, and then if somebody took him. And
I mean, I wouldn't be like opposed to it if I saw, they created a side story with Arson, because people would still know that it's me, who wrote the original character. So I'm not. I mean, it's okay. The way I view it, I think, or the way I would view it if someone were to do that to my book, is kind of like a person, remaking a song or remaking a film. You know
like
what I'm saying?
Cover,
of a cover of a song that's a really popular song, and then this new band comes along and says, hey, let me try to do that. So I mean, I think as long as they would say like, oh, original concept by Estevan Vega, or check out Arson, the full novel, I think I'd be cool with it.
So you grew up here in Middletown.
Yes.
Your 5th grade teacher and your dad together kind of pushed you into this amazing...
The dynamic duo.
Yeah. So what are you doing here in college?
You never really stop learning. And so I didn't go to college to kind of learn to be a writer, because I've always been a writer from an early age. The reason I went to college was to expand on what I already know, like meet and network with people, because I love doing that, meeting other creative people. That's always cool to me. That's always been a huge focus. And also just experience, because everything that you experience becomes, fuel for your novels and fuel for your stories and characters, and helping add depth to them and making the characters feel more real and authentic. And so everything that I experience, I can kind of later turn into my novels if I choose.
Do you have friends who read your novels and look for themselves in them?
Some have done that. A lot of my friends are guys, and a lot of my friends are, because they're guys, don't read very much. So I kind of have to like nudge them, like, have you read it? Have you read it? Have you read it? Check it out. But definitely the ones who have read it, they look for themselves at that was loosely based on me. Or I remember my brother, my older brother, his name was Alex, or his name is Alex, I should say. And one of the characters from my first book is Alex, but it's a female. And I remember him like, dude, really? Why'd you have to make me a female? And I'm like, no, it's not you. I just like the name and I thought it fit. And so I've gotten stuff like that.
What does your mother think about this?
She's read all of them except the newest one. But she read the Forsaken when it was under the old title. But like I said, I rewrote literally the entire book, and this is kind of like the director's cut. It's longer, it's more in depth. The characters are better and more realistic. The dialogue is more realistic, and it was something that I was always passionate about the story concept. I just didn't feel like I executed it to the best of my ability. So going back and kind of revisiting it, it's kind of like taking one of your favorite songs and kind of reworking it.
Right, right.
It was fun.
I want to go back to the creative process. So do you get up every morning at 6 and write for 3 hours?
Oh, I wish. I kind of write when it hits me, when the inspiration hits, or I find that sometimes if I haven't written for a few days, I'm like twitchy, like I gotta write this, I gotta get this out of me. I try to write as often as I can, several times a week, and when I do write, it's usually for several hours at a time, and I have to write in silence. I'm not one of those people who like writes with like a huge gigantic movie score behind them or anything like that. I like to write in quiet, and being one of 4 brothers, sometimes it can be complicated, trying to find concentration in a house when my brother's singing in the shower at ridiculous volumes and my other brother is screaming on his Xbox Live because his friend just shot him playing Halo, and and my dad's cooking with loud music in the background, so sometimes it can be challenging. So I found that when I'm at college, I can write in the library, and it's really cool, and the silence is just, it works.
The silence is fantastic.
It's good.
So when you have teachers, I know you have these college teachers here, what kind of things do they say to you that either makes you feel like you've really got something that is building inside of you that can find a space in your books? So what kind of feedback? I'm trying to understand, like, what is the positive feedback you get from your teachers and your friends and your family?
Okay. Well, the feedback from friends and family has always been good. My family is really encouraging about it. My friends have always been, even if they haven't read it all, they've always been really supportive of it, and that's cool. I have a few friends who walk around with the Arson T-shirt, which is awesome. My little brother wears it to school sometimes, which is cool. But as far as teachers go, it's funny because sometimes I'm reluctant to tell them, because I'm like not sure how it's going to impact my grade. Oh, you write novels, therefore I'm going to give this paper a C when the same kind of paper would get an A from somebody else, Yeah. So, but this semester I kind of just bit the bullet, and last semester too, I just told my teachers, I said, I'm a writer, and so far they've been really cool about it.
And they're very happy about it, I would think. So do you have an editor?
Yes, I do. I use a woman named Audra Marvin, and she's awesome. She gives me her honest feedback. She doesn't pull any punches, and she says, Estevan, this works, or this doesn't. Fix this. I don't like this. And so that's always really helpful. Okay,
so we sadly we have to take another break, but then I want to come back and ask, how did you find your editor, and how did you get these things published?
Yeah.
Because here they are on my desk. Well, we're back. This is Anna Wasesha from Middlesex Community College talking with one of our college students here at Middlesex who's also a novelist, and the whole process is so remarkable. So tell me, how old are you?
I'm 23.
So I'm just sort of rolling my eyes and thinking, this is so wonderful. And if a 5th grade teacher and your father were able to kind of open this part of you and let it blossom, imagine the geniuses that are out there that just need the same kind of encouragement.
Definitely.
Yeah, and so I look at these books on my desk, and my daughter's also 23.
Okay.
And she always says to me, Mom, my generation's the most literate generation, because they're texting and they're Facebooking and they're writing all the time. And do you think that that's true? That people my age often say, what's wrong with college students today is they don't like to read, they don't like to write, and we got to fix that. But what do you think? Do you think that you're the most literate generation?
As far as texting goes, we're definitely the most texting generation. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have texting and email, which just like 15 years ago wasn't really even existing. It's funny because I was reading a paper, I was proofreading my younger brother's paper, and he actually spelled though, T-H-O. And I'm like, dude, there's a UGH at the end of that. He's like, no, really? You know, because he texts so much, and because we use that slang and like LOL, and we use the letter U instead of YOU, we are a very literate generation because of that. We're very communicative, you know, because of those things. But I think at the same point, our ability to like articulate the true, you know, English language sometimes gets a little murky, you know? And so I think we need to sometimes just step back and just like reevaluate our educational system, I guess. I definitely think that, yes, there are a lot of students who are reluctant, but I'm also finding that those same reluctant students, when given a different type of story or a different type of, you know, fiction or book or memoir or whatever appeals to them, they'll sit down and read the whole thing cover to cover. I think the issue is that people have been like forced to read certain things that just don't appeal to them for so long, that they simply say, oh, I don't like to read, you know?
Right,
but it's
I
not
don't like
that.
to read that stuff.
Right,
yeah.
right. And so I think what would be helpful is younger generations, like, you know, like when I was in 5th grade, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, you know, and so on. I think if we could give them a little bit more freedom to kind of explore different types of stories, I think that we would find that there are a lot of readers out there who would, you know, before call themselves reluctant, but after say, no, I actually do like to read, you know. And I'm finding that with my series, you know, I'm going and I'm speaking to middle schools and high schools and such, and people are telling me, oh, so-and-so never speaks in class, or so-and-so never likes to read, but they read your book, you know? Yeah. So that's really cool.
It is cool. And I mean, I think another one of the tensions is the idea that because so many children watch so many hours of television, they're used to very short, you know,
attention spans.
Right, exactly. But then when Harry Potter came out,
that thing is like, it's a tarantula killer. It's so thick.
Right, exactly.
You know?
And everybody was reading that.
Yep. And same with Twilight. Those books are like 600-700 pages, and they're doing it. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's choice. It's options. It's giving kids saying, okay, you can do this, or you could do this. You could do this, or you could do this. You know what I'm saying? And if someone didn't come to me, if my teacher didn't assign that assignment, if my father didn't say, Estevan, do this, you know, a whole world would have been shut to me, and I would be one of those people that we're talking about, reluctant readers. Oh, I don't like to read, or oh, I don't like to write. You know.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. Well, I promised I would get back to how did you find your editor, and because
yes.
we may be having people out in the audience who are asking to themselves, you know, I've got a novel inside of me. What would I do? So first of all, the editor. How did you find your editor?
I actually found her through Arson. Came out originally through a company called Tate Publishing, and so I used the cover design that they provided and the editor that they provided. And then what happened was, a few months after my book released, both the cover designer and the editor, you know, left the company and pursued other things. And I was like, oh man, what do I do? So I kind of felt alone in the company, you know. And so last March or April, I think, I left that company, and so I just started using them as freelancers. So now I use the same editor, you know, for the last 3 or 4 novels that I've done and my short stories, and I use that cover artist too, as well as another one. So it's just the freedom. It's like it goes back to choice, freedom. You know, it's really cool.
It is very cool. Well, so at the very beginning, when you had a manuscript, how did you find the publisher?
A million different query letters and submissions and rejections, and, you know, we like your stuff, we don't like your stuff. You know, it's poetic, but it's not for us. You know, it's like roller coaster. You know.
Are you selling these things in the United Kingdom?
Yes, they're on the UK Kindle charts as well as paperback as well.
So you're speaking obviously to readers there.
Yeah. I actually had a woman in the UK. She reached out to me and wanted the book and said she was going to talk to all her friends over there. So I'm like, hey, that works.
Have you been over there yet?
I haven't.
Oh, that would be.
I definitely want
book
to.
Tour.
I definitely want to. Yes. I think when this series gets a little bit bigger, or when I have maybe 1 or 2 more books out, I think I'll venture out there.
So now I'm going to come back to you're a college student, and are you thinking about transferring to a 4-year institute? Do you want to? What degree do you ultimately want to earn?
Probably an English degree. I'm at the stage right now where writing is my complete focus, and so I shouldn't say complete, my 90% focus. And then there's also school, you know what I'm saying? I'm in school to do things like I said, reach out, network, experience life, and experience this stage of being a kid, I guess, or that transition between kid and adult, and write also full-time and promote full-time. And I mean, it is a full-time job, like in addition to my schoolwork and classes, and in addition to, my family life and friends and all that kind of stuff. So definitely English degree, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. What about a peer group? Do you hang out with other writers?
You know, all the writers I know are like pretty much online.
Isn't that?
Like,
I mean, this is
it's
going back,
so funny.
yeah.
It's crazy. Like I've met so many other writers and bloggers on Facebook and Twitter, and just at these conventions, like I said, Comic-Cons and writers conventions and book festivals and music festivals. I mean, I've met bands, I've met fellow writers, I've met bloggers, I've met fans, diehard fans, of all different genres. So
In this
it's
genre,
really just opening up.
and how would you
some
capture
stuff.
the genre for this group of novels that you've written?
Well, the Arson series is kind of like young adult supernatural with a coming of age element to it. Arson is a 17-year-old kid struggling with the ability to create fire.
Wow. And what coming of age books did you read that kind of began your thinking even about coming of age? I mean, at some point you have to kind of go back to the blank slate,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously there's the classics like Catcher in the Rye, and there's a bunch of other ones I read in high school that right now at this moment are escaping me. But books like The Great Gatsby and
Oh, I love The Great Gatsby.
just pretty much everything I read in high school like impacted me in a big way. Whether it was Stephen King or Richard Matheson or the great F. Scott Fitzgerald, Great Gatsby, or what's his name, Ray Bradbury. Pretty much all those kind of just meshed into one.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, let me just take because I wrote supernatural, paranormal type stuff before the Arson series, but that's the one where I just got personal. And so the coming of age element kind of came from like my own experience in my own life up until age 17, because that's when I started it. And then just picking little pieces from my friends' lives and kind of just having fun with it.
So what's the one thing that you would tell somebody else who is thinking that they had a book inside of them?
Do it. Like Nike, just do it.
Yeah.
You can't not, because I think you're going to look back in 5 or 10 years and you'll be like, why didn't I do it? Just take a shot. I mean, you might fall flat on your face, but you might become a bestseller. Who knows? It's that who knows and that what if that I think will drive you to succeed.
You also are a movie fan, right? So do you think that
Huge.
these books would fit well on the silver screen?
Yes, I've been crossing my fingers for the last several years, waiting for it to happen. And I've met directors, producers, filmmakers. It just hasn't happened yet. So I think like many things in life, it might happen. It's probably going to, but it's just not my time. You just gotta wait. Patience, I'm learning, is part of a writer's life.
Yeah, well, you're so incredibly young.
I know, that's what everyone tells me. My publisher's like, dude, relax. In 10 years, you're gonna look back at this and say, what was I so freaking out for?
Yeah.
So I gotta keep that in perspective.
So do you have a lawyer who helps you with these things?
Honestly, I don't. I did have a lawyer. I did get approached by a producer who wanted to option the books for screen, and so she sent over a contract, and I did have my father's lawyer look at it. But that's the only time I ever involved a lawyer, was because I was like, okay, this is a big deal, let me involve a lawyer. But when it comes to the contracts with the books, I just read it over, my father reads it over, and if it's agreeable, my publisher's cool. He's like, change whatever you want and send it back. He's really cool and upfront with it. That's why I signed with him.
Have you met him face to face?
I have, yes.
That's
I
good.
actually did the Idaho Book Extravaganza, and we were both keynote speakers. We actually spoke together, and I mean, I've been to his house. I've hung out with his family. He's cool.
I'm laughing because Idaho is one of those places nobody's ever been.
Yep.
And they have a book extravaganza.
It's kind of like Portland, Connecticut. No one even, or half the people don't even know that it's there. But it's there. That's where I live.
Yeah.
It exists.
Sadly, we have to close this interview down. But so what last thoughts would you like to leave with the listeners? Well, I think it would probably be important to tell them where they can buy the book locally.
Oh, yeah. Walk into
Books.
any bookstore. I've done pretty much signings so many places around Connecticut. I did Borders, Barnes & Noble. I've done Wesleyan bookstore. Pretty much anywhere. And then if you can't find it, they can always order it. If they can't, for some reason, get it, Amazon is your best bet.
It is kind of the best bet, isn't it?
It's just easy.
I know.
Paperback and Kindle. A lot of things are going ebook route, and so I'm still doing physical bookstores. I'm still doing physical book signings, but the ebook market is it's gonna take the world by storm.
I know. Do you read your books on ebook? Actually, do you read your books?
I do.
Okay,
I read them
good.
several times before release. The editing process is like mind-numbing sometimes, but yeah.
And then you read them on Kindles.
I actually have the Kindle for PC app. I actually have never bought a Kindle, but I'm planning to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I predict, I would be with you. I predict in a few years we'll be entirely on ebooks.
It's like the iPod,
I know. And the iPhone.
Right.
And the iPad.
And the iPad. And everything I.
Anything. Exactly. Well, this has been really lovely speaking with you today. I'm so glad I got a chance to meet you.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you're a student here at Middlesex.
I know. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So this has been the Middlesex Moments radio show. And if you are interested in learning more about Middlesex Community College, you can look it up online on your iPad or your iPhone
There you go.
at mxcc.edu. I'm Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, wishing you a good day.